When we think about financial security, we usually picture like a fortress.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
A giant steel vault.
Yeah, exactly. You put the money in, you lock the heavy door, and the entire goal is just to make sure nothing ever touches it. We treat our resources like, I don't know, like ancient artifacts that need to be sealed behind museum glass.
Right, which is safe, sure, but it's completely static.
Yeah, exactly.
It's the ultimate preservation mindset. I mean, we're essentially biologically and, sociologically conditioned to hoard for the winter.
Right.
You gather your resources, you protect them from predators, and you survive. But survival is a very, very different mechanism than growth.
Mm-hmm.
The landscape of actual wealth creation doesn't reward hoarding. It demands movement. It demands an engine, not a vault.
Okay, let's unpack this, because that tension, the vault versus the engine, that is exactly what we're looking at today.
Yeah, it's a profound shift.
It really is. And for you listening, as a learner who's always looking for the most efficient, high-impact knowledge, this deep dive is going to be fascinating because today's source material is incredibly concise.
It is remarkably short.
Right. It's a brief excerpt from a video script. I mean, we're talking literally just 3 sentences long.
Which is almost unheard of for us.
Right. But the mission of this deep dive is to unpack the massive philosophical punch regarding personal finance that is just crammed into those few words. It outlines a fundamental difference between saving and investing.
Yeah, and it totally challenges the baseline of what it means to be financially responsible.
Exactly.
It manages to dismantle this really ingrained way of looking at our financial lives in just a shockingly short amount of time. I mean, it forces the reader to immediately reevaluate their default behaviors.
Totally. So the text starts with this very blunt, unyielding statement. It just says, saving money won't make you rich. Investing will.
Yeah, no sugarcoating.
None. But I have to play devil's advocate here for a second and push back on this. Wait, isn't saving money supposed to be the ultimate responsible financial goal? I mean, think about it. From the time we're kids, we are handed a piggy bank. We aren't handed a stock portfolio.
Right, exactly. Put your coins in the little pig.
Yeah. We're praised for holding on to things. We are taught that discipline equals putting money away and just not touching it. So why does the source draw such an aggressive, hard line between, the virtue of saving and the reality of getting rich?
What's fascinating here is the absolute certainty of the text's claim and how it just directly attacks that childhood conditioning you just mentioned.
Yeah, it really does.
It deliberately strips away the illusion that saving alone is a vehicle for wealth. It separates morality from mechanics.
Morality from mechanics. Tell me more about that.
Well, we attach a moral goodness to saving, right?
Right, yeah. Like if you save, you're a good person.
Exactly. If you save, you are prudent, you're disciplined, you are a quote-unquote good adult.
Yes, exactly.
But the mechanism of becoming rich, as the text explicitly states, requires a fundamentally different action. It's not attacking the discipline of saving, to be clear.
Right, it's not saying saving is bad.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
It's just categorizing it as insufficient for the stated goal. Saving is merely a precursor. It positions investing as the sole engine for getting rich.
But doesn't that feel, I don't know, incredibly dismissive to the average person?
No, absolutely.
Because it takes this thing we've all been conditioned to view as the finish line, putting money away and keeping it safe, which, by the way, requires real sacrifice for a lot of people.
It really does. It's hard to do.
And it suddenly downgrades it to just being this preliminary step. You feel like you've done the hard work by not spending the money, and the text is basically saying, congratulations on being responsible, but that doesn't equal rich.
It feels dismissive because it shatters an illusion. I mean, we often confuse the act of gathering resources with the act of actually building something with them.
Mm-hmm.
The text is pointing out that saving is just gathering the raw materials.
Right.
But gathering raw materials, no matter how many you stockpile, doesn't spontaneously generate a finished building.
Wow. Yeah, that's a great way to put it.
Furthermore, the text uses the definitive word won't. It doesn't say saving money might not make you rich.
Right. Saving money won't make you rich.
Exactly. It establishes this strict binary to force the reader out of their comfort zone.
And that binary is where I think a lot of people get stuck.
Hmm.
Because we equate safety with success. If I put $10,000 under my mattress, I know for an absolute fact I will have $10,000 tomorrow.
Yes.
But if I invest it, I could have $8,000 tomorrow. The vault feels safe. The engine feels dangerous.
It feels dangerous if you don't understand the mechanics of the engine. But the text is implying that the vault has its own hidden danger, which is stagnation.
Right, because inflation.
Exactly. The preservation mindset assumes the world around the vault stays exactly the same. But we know the financial landscape is constantly shifting.
Yeah, the cost of living moves, the value of currency changes.
Right. So if your resources are just static in a vault while the world moves forward, you are technically losing ground.
Right, you're actually getting poorer by just sitting there.
Yes. And the source positions investing as the sole vehicle to outpace that shift. It's a completely different verb. Saving sits there. Investing works.
It sits there versus it works. That creates a gap, right? A massive divide between where you might be, which is saving, being responsible but static, and where you want to be, which is rich, dynamic, growing.
Yes, a huge gap.
But simply pointing out that someone is standing on the wrong side of that divide isn't very helpful without offering a bridge. I mean, you can't just tell someone their piggy bank is broken and then walk away.
No, you can't. Which is actually a fundamental rule of persuasion.
Right.
Once you shatter a deeply held belief, like this idea that saving is enough, you create a vacuum of anxiety.
Oh, that makes sense.
If you don't immediately fill that vacuum with a replacement strategy, the listener will just reject the premise entirely and go back to their vault. Because, hey, at least the vault is familiar.
And the source attempts to fill that vacuum immediately. The very next sentence says, in this video, I break down the exact step-by-step path.
Right.
I want to pause on that phrase. It completely changes the emotional temperature of the text, because it's the difference between being handed a massive pile of bricks versus being handed a blueprint. A step-by-step path changes everything.
It really does.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though, because if we look at those words, exact step-by-step, it's a very specific promise.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the pile of bricks represents the raw savings.
Right.
Without a blueprint, what do you even do with it? If you just start stacking bricks haphazardly because someone told you that you need to build a wall, it's going to collapse.
Yeah, it's just going to fall over.
And that is exactly what investing feels like to a lot of people when they first realize saving isn't enough. It feels like an unstructured, highly dangerous pile of bricks.
And maybe a little suspicious, too. I mean, the source doesn't just promise a path, it promises the exact step-by-step path. Those adjectives are doing so much heavy lifting there.
They are.
But let's be real, finance is chaotic. The markets are completely unpredictable. So anyone promising an exact step-by-step path to get rich usually sets off my internal scam alarm.
Oh, for sure.
Isn't a guaranteed paint-by-numbers approach in a volatile environment a massive red flag? Why should we trust a blueprint that claims to be, quote-unquote, exact?
That skepticism is entirely warranted. I mean, if you take exact step-by-step path to mean a guaranteed lack of risk,
Right.
or like a foolproof crystal ball, then yes, it's a huge red flag.
Right.
But rhetorically, we need to look at what this phrasing is actually doing. The promise of a step-by-step path fundamentally changes the intimidating nature of investing.
How so?
It acts as an antidote to decision fatigue and paralysis.
Paralysis because the financial world is notoriously opaque.
Right. Exactly. Investing has this reputation for being inherently hostile to the outsider. It's associated with complex charts, unpredictable markets, and highly specialized jargon.
Ugh, the jargon is the worst.
It is. And jargon, by the way, often functions as a gatekeeping mechanism.
Oh, interesting. Like trying to keep people out.
Yeah, it makes people feel like they're standing outside this exclusive club where everyone else knows the secret handshake.
Right.
And when you face that level of complexity, the default human response is paralysis. You just do nothing. You go back to saving.
So the phrase exact step-by-step path isn't necessarily a promise of zero risk. It's a promise of manageable cognitive load.
Yes, perfectly said. The author is essentially stepping into the role of a guide.
Okay.
They're saying, I have mapped this chaotic wilderness. I've charted the territory. I have placed stepping stones across the river so you don't have to figure out where to put your feet.
Wow.
And turns a complex, abstract, and honestly frightening financial concept into an actionable sequential journey for the listener.
It totally demystifies it. It replaces anxiety with a checklist. And psychologically, we know humans love checklists.
We really do.
Because a checklist implies that the heavy analytical lifting has already been done by someone else. We just have to execute the physical action. You know, step 1, do this. Step 2, do that.
Exactly.
You don't have to figure out step 10 while you're still stuck on step 1. It's incredibly comforting.
It is a highly sophisticated rhetorical maneuver. I mean, think about it. The first sentence creates a state of need. Your current strategy of just saving is flawed.
Right.
Then the second sentence immediately presents the author as the sole provider of the solution to that need. The promise is that if you follow this sequence, the chaos of investing is neutralized into mere execution.
But that brings up another massive hurdle, doesn't it? Let's say
Yeah.
you buy into the blueprint, you trust the guide, you are totally ready to execute the checklist.
Right.
The natural friction point is still the cost of entry. I mean, even with the perfect, exact step-by-step instructions, who is this path actually for?
Right, that's the big question.
Do you need $1 million to even take the first step? Do you need some massive inheritance to buy the materials the blueprint calls for?
That is the ultimate bottleneck in financial advice. The prevailing cultural assumption is that wealth creation is a game only played by people who already possess wealth.
Yes.
If the blueprint requires premium materials that you can't afford, well, then the blueprint is completely useless to you.
Which is exactly the excuse most people use to not start. I'll invest when I'm richer. We see this all the time.
Constantly.
People think they need to reach a certain threshold of saving before they're even allowed to cross over into the investing landscape.
Right.
It creates this awful catch-22. How do you get the real amount of money without investing? But how do you invest without the real amount of money?
This raises an important question about the democratization of wealth building implied by the text.
Okay.
Let's look at the final clause of the source material. It promises the path, quote, to turn your savings into real wealth, even if you're starting small.
Even if you're starting small, I mean, it directly attacks that catch-22. But I have to ask, and maybe I'm being cynical here, does starting small actually build wealth mathematically, or is this just a motivational trick to get people to stop procrastinating?
That's a fair question.
Because intuitively, a small input yields a small output.
Right. Well, it functions as both a psychological unlock and a mathematical reality, provided the time horizon is long enough.
Okay, so time is the key.
Yes. Because historically, the narrative has been that investing requires a massive barrier to entry. You needed a literal human broker. You needed substantial capital just to meet the account minimums. You needed to be able to absorb significant losses.
Yeah, starting small was literally impossible in the traditional wealth building narrative. You would get laughed out of the bank.
You wouldn't even get your foot in the door. But the text cuts right through that historical paradox. It offers deep reassurance by validating the reader's current position, regardless of their initial financial scale. It explicitly states that the exact step-by-step path is accessible to everyone. It doesn't say, hey, once you save up $50,000, then we can talk. It meets the reader exactly where they are today.
Think about your own financial journey for a second, right? How many times have you looked at an opportunity or read an article about the markets and thought, well, that's not for me. I don't have enough to play that game.
We've all done that.
By stating, even if you're starting small, the source completely removes the ultimate barrier to entry. It strips away the excuse of not having enough capital. How does the concept of starting small fundamentally disrupt our traditional ideas of who gets to build real wealth?
Well, it completely levels the playing field. And we have to examine the transformation promised in that same sentence. The phrase is, turn your savings into real wealth. It implies a fundamental change in the nature of the money itself.
Yeah, it's a total transformation of the substance. It takes the quote-unquote savings, which we established earlier is static, inert, incapable of making you rich, and it uses the step-by-step investing path as the mechanism to mutate it into real wealth. And that modifier real is doing a lot of subtle work there.
It really is.
Yeah.
It implies that mere savings isn't real wealth. Savings is potential energy.
Potential energy.
It's pent-up capacity.
Yeah.
Real wealth, at least in the context of this text, is kinetic. It's active. It generates its own momentum.
Oh, yes.
And the crucial promise here is that this dramatic transformation from potential to kinetic energy isn't strictly dependent on the sheer volume of the initial input.
Right. It's shifting the focus entirely away from what you currently have and placing all the importance on the habit of what you were going to do with it.
Exactly.
The verb is what matters, not the noun. It's not about the size of the savings. It's about the action of investing. It's not about how many bricks you have in the pile. It's about the fact that you are following the blueprint.
Precisely. By validating the small start, the text shifts the reader's identity.
Their identity.
Yes. You no longer have to identify as a saver who is waiting for permission to become an investor.
Oh, that's powerful.
You can adopt the identity of an investor today simply by engaging with the step-by-step path.
Yeah.
It encourages immediate action. If you don't need to wait until you have a massive stockpile, then there is literally no logical reason not to take the first step on that path right now.
It creates a sense of urgency, But it's a positive, accessible urgency rather than a panicked one.
Right.
When you break down the architecture of these 3 sentences, it is just an incredibly efficient piece of communication.
It really, really is.
Yeah.
It systematically walks the reader through a complete psychological journey.
Yeah.
First, it identifies a flawed default behavior, which is saving as the end goal. Then it introduces a structured, anxiety-reducing alternative, the step-by-step path.
Right.
And finally, it dismantles the primary objection to adopting that alternative, which is the fear of not having enough to start. It aligns the reader's desire for real wealth with the author's promised solution, all while totally removing the traditional roadblocks.
So what does this all mean? Let's synthesize the ground we've covered on this deep dive.
Sure.
We started by looking at the friction between the vault and the engine. We dismantled that myth that putting money in a piggy bank is the finish line of financial responsibility. The core argument from the source is just so clear: saving is merely the gathering of raw materials.
Yes.
It is the prerequisite, but investing is the actual vehicle to wealth. We then explored the fear and the paralysis that comes with the investing wilderness, right? And how the promise of an exact step-by-step path acts as a blueprint. It replaces the anxiety of the unknown with the comfort of a checklist. Even if we naturally approach such promises with a healthy dose of skepticism, which we should.
We absolutely should.
And ultimately, we unpack the profound reassurance that this engine of wealth is accessible. The alchemy of turning static savings into dynamic, kinetic wealth does not require a massive fortune to initiate. By validating the concept of starting small, the text democratizes the entire concept of financial growth.
It really does.
It completely removes the excuse of waiting for the perfect moment or the perfect bank balance. It's a complete mindset reset, moving from static preservation to dynamic, structured growth.
Absolutely.
But as we wrap up this deep dive into the philosophy of wealth creation, I know you always have that one final layer to add to the conversation, something beyond just the mechanics of the text.
I do, yeah. We've spent this entire time analyzing the mechanics of the shift from saver to investor. We've talked about blueprints and engines and kinetic energy.
Right.
But I want to leave you, the listener, with a final thought to ponder that builds on this premise.
Okay.
The source promises to tune your savings into real wealth, and it claims to give you the exact path to get there. But once you step onto that path, once you leave the safety of the vault behind and your money actually starts working for you, you have to ask yourself a much harder question.
What's that?
Beyond just the numbers in a bank account, beyond the mechanics of the step-by-step process, what does real wealth actually look like for you and the life you want to build with it?
Wow. That is the ultimate question, isn't it? Because a blueprint can tell you how to build the engine, but it can't tell you where you actually want to drive.
Exactly.
Once the money is no longer the hurdle, you have to figure out the destination. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. We love taking these shortcuts to being well-informed right alongside you.
It's been a privilege to unpack this with you. Keep questioning those default assumptions and keep learning.
And remember, if you want to build something that lasts, don't just lock your bricks in a steel vault. Find a blueprint, challenge the map, and start building your engine. We'll catch you on the next one.